What's up, everybody? Tom Pelissero here with Judd Zulgad at the Metrodome shortly after the Vikings finished their 2011 season in the first day of 2012 in fitting fashion. The 17-13 loss to the Chicago Bears that had all the classic elements of a 2011 Vikings loss, Judd. You had dumb penalties,
Yep.
You had offensive ineptitude, you had a breakdown in the secondary, all those things that come together, and you also had Jared Allen out there putting on a show in a game that they lose.
And Jared Allen had an unbelievable game, but you know what this was, Tom? When it comes to the sacks, this was one of those games where he was going to do, and they were coaching-wise going to do everything to get that Strahan sack record. He ends up, what, a half sack short of that? But it really was. This season, this game, the Vikings have to be so happy to have this over with, because this thing was a mess today. And how many times did we look at each other during the course of games in the Metrodome this year and say, this is awful? This is terrible. I'd say we did it at least half the games.
This was a bad game because you had Josh McCown, who has no business being in the NFL, out there attempting to function. I mean, no wonder the Bears lost 5 games in a row.
Come on, he knocked him out of the playoffs in 03.
That was a bad, just an ugly performance to watch. And Joe Webb, who got no practice reps during the week, is out there trying to function. Didn't have anything going. They clearly made the commitment they were going to blitz him. They had trouble bringing him down, but It's not necessarily a virtue of a quarterback. The fact that you can extend a play for 10 seconds and break tackles, that's good. But he just didn't make a whole lot of throws after the first series where he made a couple. Just didn't make a ton of throws.
Real quickly on the quarterback thing, too, do you agree with me that I know the Vikings coaching staff saying we've got Ponder, we've got Webb, we're so excited about the future? I don't think at this point, other than thinking that Ponder has to develop because of where he was drafted, I don't think they know what they have at all. And I would argue that because they have 2, they have nothing.
Yeah, I can see that argument. I think, though, you saw a little bit of Ponder today early on in this game where they obviously had talked to him about set your damn feet and make a throw. We saw him do that a couple of times where he just stood in there, he let the rush come to him, knew where the spot was going to be, and that's all the timing that you want to be able to develop. I know it's a huge thing they want to work with him on through this offseason. I really think it's really difficult to pass judgment on either quarterback at this point because Ponder hasn't had the offseason, and Webb is being thrown in situations where he's either going to succeed or fail for the same reasons, which is he doesn't really know what he's doing.
My point being, though, that if this year showed anything, it's a good thing that Christian Ponder got to play. That's a very good thing, but I still don't think we know exactly what they have there.
No, I agree.
And other than that, I would argue this season, as I've said to you before, is a mulligan. There is nothing else from this season other than Ponder playing that I look at and say, okay, the Vikings have identified this or that.
Well, what I asked Leslie Frazier after the game was, we're asking a lot of the same questions now that we were throughout the season. What did you, if anything, learn from the season? What he said was, I think I have a better grasp on our personnel, what we have, and what we need. Which is his way of saying, I thought we were a lot better than we were. We're actually not good at all.
Yeah, and that's the scary thing. The scariest thing is that a lot of us saw this team not being very good. Nobody saw a 3-win team.
No.
But Leslie saw a completely different product. They clearly were worse than any of us could have imagined, and because of that, this week could be an interesting one at Winter Park.
And how do you see this playing out? I asked Frazier about the timeline. He said there's no 24 or 48-hour thing. Now, he's scheduled to address this, I think, at, 3 p.m. on Tuesday?
Yes.
Sometime on Tuesday afternoon. Players are going to have their exit interviews tomorrow morning. He's going to meet with a lot of the outgoing guys, anybody else who wants to talk to him about various issues the team might have faced during the course of the season. That's going to play out, but then they know what direction they're going to go with the coaching staff. It's not as though they're sitting there and they're just going to begin analyzing this. Correct. They already know what decisions are going to be made. I think that it's fairly safe to say there's going to be significant changes on the defensive side of the ball. I don't have a great sense on the offensive side of the ball. I know a lot of people love Jeff Davidson. People really like Bill Musgrave, although everybody has seen the faults of Bill Musgrave. I think part of that is trying to get in a rhythm with the offense, trying to get in a play-calling rhythm, and not having a full offseason to work with people. Craig Johnson, I think there's some mixed reviews on, but I really don't see a lot of changes there. I don't see a change with Mike Prefer, even though his units weren't very good this year. I think he didn't have the greatest guys to work with.
I think the defensive changes, too, are not going to come as a surprise for this reason. What did they do last offseason? The last offseason, they cleaned out the offensive staff. So I think what Les did was probably part of it was financially, too, because guys were signed to contracts. Part of it was, I think Les was probably told, hey, keep these guys, see what you got, at least you know them, because Frazier, being the defensive coordinator, had familiarity with Puckett. He knew these guys. So I think he was probably told, hey, if you're going to make changes, make them on the offensive side of the ball, make them on special teams, and then readdress it after the season. And I think we both expect major changes on the defensive side of the ball, and certainly first and foremost, probably being Fred Puggage.
Well, let's not forget here, how did he go about that last offseason? He never fired anybody last offseason. Let's not forget that.
Told him to stick around the building.
Brian Murphy and Darrell Bevel, listen, we'd love to have you around, but if you want to go look for other jobs while we're interviewing people for your jobs, go ahead. So Bevel goes to Seattle, Murph goes to, what, Carolina?
Yes.
And then they hire the guys to replace them.
But the interesting thing I heard behind the scenes on Bevel was Frazier told Bevel at some point last season, after he'd gotten the job, I'm going to keep you. And then there was what? Internal friction about it from elsewhere in the organization. And this goes back to what we've talked about all year long. First and foremost, if this team is smart, you know what they start to do tomorrow? They start to decide how to have one person in charge of football personnel. Because what we're going to have again this offseason, if you don't have that, you're going to have this indecision and these in-house fights about who should stay, who should go, not only on the roster, but potentially the coaching staff, Tom.
And I do think that there's a possibility that there is something done on this front. I think it's far more likely that Rick Spielman gets promoted, or at least is told you have final say over the roster, you have final say over X, Y, and Z that he might not currently have final say over in terms of the football operation. That's far more likely than they're going to bring in some sort of a czar. They're going to give Bill Parcells $5 million a year. They don't have the money to do that, for one thing. You can give Spielman a couple extra bucks and tell him, here's the job, go after it.
To your theory, I think you go one of two directions. You either promote Spielman, and you do so knowing that his drafts have been somewhat suspect at times, depends who you talk to, or you go out and you hire somebody that we haven't heard of. Because that's where those hires come from. There are guys that are hired.
Could you have a consultant or something like that?
But I'm saying, could you also go get somebody young? I mean, when Ted Thompson was hired by the Packers in 2005, Ted had been a big name in Green Bay when he had worked with Ron Wolf, but around the league, had fans heard of this guy? Absolutely not. John Schneider is hired, by Seattle from Green Bay. He was Ted's right-hand guy. So I think the only other thing you could see if they go outside is we're going to get somebody in here who we probably aren't too familiar with, and that might not be the end of the world either.
There's going to be two names you're going to continue to hear from the Green Bay circuit, too, because everybody looks at Green Bay right now as the model for how you want to build a franchise.
Sure.
Reggie McKenzie and Elliott Wolf, those guys are going to come up for any openings there are in the league.
Elliott Wolf, son of Ron Wolf, and he's what, 30 now?
I think he's about my age.
So, once again, what I'm saying is it's not shocking if a team goes in that direction, if they hire a young guy who they know is going to put in a tremendous amount of hours.
It's going to be an interesting week, no matter what. There's nobody who tells you there's not going to be changes. Everybody from Leslie Frazier to players, everyone knows there's changes coming down. It's not just going to be wiping out the roster.
No, it's going to be some coaching staff. Personnel-wise, I don't know, unless they do what you're talking about and actually go in there and gut some guys or promote Spielman. I don't know if we're going to see big changes there, but I do know that there are some people internally who would like to see things shaken up and those shakeups starting up top.
He's Judd. I'm Tom. We'll be at the locker room for clean-out circa 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Yeah, why is it so early?
I don't know. I guess, well, they want to get him out of the building. I'm sure they're having the team meeting at 8:30.
I was hoping to sleep in.
Well, it's not going to happen. Wait till Tuesday. He's Judd. I'm Tom. See ya.